This program was created by hospice professionals for hospice professionals and will help you bring the gift of hospice to more people in your community while bringing your referral numbers higher and higher. Ready to get started? Let's get referrals. Lesson 1, the toolbox for success.
So your toolbox for success, what's it going to do for you and why do you need it? You need a toolbox because that's really the way we think of all of the skills that you need to be an effective salesperson. So you're going to have to fill this toolbox with all of the things we're going to talk about on the ensuing sessions and the ensuing modules. Each one of them is going to give you another tool to put in your toolbox. Okay, so we are going to always be adding tools, and you need to look at it from a standpoint of being a craftsman. If you think about master craftsmen, what is it that they do? As they get better, they're constantly searching for the best tools. They're refining their tools. They're getting the best hammer for the job that they're doing. They're sharpening their saw. They're constantly looking for ways that they can take those tools and make them perform better. And that's exactly what we're going to do for you here with the iSell Hospice Sales Training, because you will come away with all of the tools you need, and that's where we're going. All right, so let's look at that toolbox and see what kind of tools it is that we're going to be helping you to create, refine, and perfect. Okay, the first tool that every one of you needs to have down cold is how you introduce yourself. I believe, in fact, that people really pay short attention to that and give short shrift to it. And I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that you're really good at introducing yourself. And we'll be coming back to that obviously in the module on introductions, but I want to emphasize it now because that's going to be an important tool that you will not want to skip over. As a matter of fact, every one of these tools are important in your toolbox and they all work together. So don't feel like you can jump around and skip over introductions because I know how to do that, because that's not going to deliver the results that you're looking for as the highest performing professional hospice salesperson or liaison. So after I've introduced myself and made an impression, then I'm going to qualify. And qualifying is simply finding out if this is a good place for me to spend my time. If you think about it, if we don't know the potential of the people we're talking to, then we could easily spend days, weeks, months of our life pursuing a possible referral partner only to find out that there really wasn't anything there. So we've got to be really good at qualifying and making sure that this is the best place for me. Once I've qualified that this is the right place to be and I've gotten to the person who calls in the referrals, then I start what we call the interview or investigation phase, the probing phase, that part where my goal is to get the person I'm meeting with to tell me what their needs are. So if I can get them to tell me what's important to them and what their needs are, then I can position myself as the solution to those needs. And once I've done that, then I am going to be in a position to present my services to them. So that's really the next tool, is presentations. You have to be really good at presenting what you're doing. You've got to be able to present it from the standpoint of the customer. What's in it for them? You've identified what's important to them. Now I've got to present my services as a solution to what it is that they need. We're presenting our services as the logical solution for their need. Our goal is to integrate with their practice, integrate with their facility, integrate with whatever it is that whoever it is we're talking to, integrate with them such that we become part of how they practice medicine. Not just hospice, your hospice. After we've done that, then we need to gain commitment. We need to look at it and say, based on what we've talked about today, which of your patients is this going to make a difference for? You need to be comfortable, and we'll get you comfortable, asking questions every time you meet with someone that would be considered closing questions. Questions to get them to commit to referring to us or think about patients that would be appropriate to refer to our hospice program. What you'll find is that if you ask for referrals on a regular basis, you'll receive referrals on a regular basis. But the other thing you're going to get is objections. Because if I ask you to do business with me and refer a patient to me, and there's something in your mind that hasn't been resolved, then you're going to bring it up in the form of an objection. So that's the next piece that we're going to talk about, and that tool in your toolbox is objections, handling objections. We will equip you. We will make sure that your tool is such that you can handle any objection that comes your way. Absolutely, positively, there's nothing anyone can throw at you that you won't be well equipped to handle. Once I've handled that objection, then I've got to come back to securing the commitment. I'm going to be asking them, based on what we've discussed, let's do business. Which 3 of your patients should we get on service so that you can experience the benefit to you? And again, we'll be coming back to each one of these tools and building them for your toolbox and helping you to perfect your personal toolbox. After I've secured the commitment and gained a referral, I now have taken them from prospect to account. Now that they're an account, I've got to follow up in service with them, and I also have to probe for additional needs. So once they've become an account, I'm going right back to that interview phase. So something I want to underscore now is this. Always have questions, always be probing, because there's always something more that you can ask an account. Now I'll tell you, the pushback we get, as we hear from reps all the time, well, but Mike, my best accounts, I mean, what am I going to ask them? I'm in there 3 times a week. We've done business for years. They give us all their patients. What could I possibly ask them? Well, guess what? Unless you can show me that those accounts are totally and fully using hospice for all of the patients in their patient population that would be appropriate to refer to hospice on a timely basis, there's always needs that you can uncover so that we can present the solution that hospice is, the gift of hospice for the patient and the families and the referral partner, and expand your business. At every juncture, every time you're formulating a strategy, every time that you're coming up with a way that you're going to get an account to give us more business or open new accounts or work with your accounts, every strategy that you employ, I want you to think about the fact that there are 2 ways for you to gain referrals and grow your business. And those 2 ways are this. The first one is we can compete for the business. So it's a patient that's been identified by someone in the community. It could be a physician, it could be anyone. It could be a discharge planner, facility, whatever. They've identified this person as having a need for hospice, and they're going to refer to hospice. What we're talking about with this way of getting referrals is we're competing for those referrals and winning that competition. Now, interestingly, that's where most of us spend all of our time. We think about it and we think, okay, how am I going to get more referrals? Well, I'm going to go out and compete, or I'm going to have to, I'm complaining about competitors. But there's a second way to increase your referrals. And this way may be, for many of you, the most powerful tool in your toolbox. Strategically, think about, how do I get the community to expand their use of hospice services? If you think about it, there's absolutely no accounts out there that you can point to that 100% of the time are appropriately referring patients to hospice on a timely manner in every single patient that would be beneficial. Now, we know that some patients are not going to want hospice. There's all kinds of reasons why they may not result in an admission. But there's a huge number of people out there in the community who, if we leave it as it is today, if you don't do your job of going out and helping the community expand how they use hospice services, there are people who will die without the gift of hospice. And if you think about it, that's why we do what we do. That's why myself and my team work with hospice organizations such as yours, so that you can better tell your story in the community, so that you can expand the use of hospice within your community, and those people are going to get the help. They're going to have the gift of hospice. I'm guessing that that's why you do what you do. So never, when you're formulating strategy, questions to ask, probes, objection handling, whatever you're doing, never forget that one of our most powerful ways to grow our referrals and grow our business and fulfill our mission, which is to help people know about hospice and make an educated decision so that they receive hospice services, that you've got to strategically think about, how am I going to expand their use of our services?
Lesson 2, getting organized.
We'll talk further in other modules about planning and scheduling and managing your time and whatnot. What I'm talking about now is being organized. And that starts, and if you're a brand new rep, start today. Because everything you do that's in a disorganized fashion becomes a habit that you have to break. And if some of you have been doing this job for many years, I can promise you that you could be more organized. I'll bet some of you would even say that you wish you had time to get organized. I wish I had time to stop and figure this all out and get organized. Well, I'm going to tell you, stop and do it. It will pay for itself many times over. Being organized will get you so much more time because you're organized, and more importantly, you will feel better about the job you're doing. So you've got to get organized. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about planning. We're big on planning. You've got to plan your days. You've got to plan your week. You've got to plan your strategies. So carve out time, not during prime selling hours, where you can do your planning process and have those tools in place. Now, many of you may have electronic customer relationships management systems or CRM systems, or you may be using a paper system. It really doesn't matter what system you're using. What matters is that you have a system and you do your planning, and it's logical and it moves things forward through the process that we just outlined in the last session, which is getting people to expand their use, getting people to use us for their services. So you've got to have a really good plan. And we're famous for saying that you've got to plan your work and work your plan. So don't just make a plan and then set it aside. You know, don't do one of those things where your boss says, I need a plan, a sales plan for 2010 or 2011 or whenever it is. And you get the plan all done, you work hard on it, you turn it in, it gets approved, and you set it aside. And basically you don't come back to it until next year when they come back to you and say, okay, we need that plan for next year. That's a waste of time. So whatever planning you do, put it into action. You've got to execute on it or you're not going to get the bang for your buck. Now let's talk about your car, because your car is truly your office. If you think about it, you're going to spend a majority of your time in the car. So you've got to set your car up so that it is organized in a fashion that will support you and the job you're doing and make it easy. You've got to remember that the passenger side seat is essentially your desk. Okay, that's where you're going to keep those items that you need to be able to access basically before every single call. So as we're organizing the car, think about which items are going to go on the passenger seat. Now the only time that this becomes a problem is if you have a sales manager or a coach or someone, a mentor, a trainer from the outside, consultant or whatever, riding with you, because they typically want to ride in the front seat. And then all of a sudden, they're sitting on your desk. But for the most part, most days, that desk is your desk and you've got to think of it as that. So imagine that that's your desk area. This is your office. How am I going to organize my desk so that it's going to support what I'm doing? Okay. What do I really need on a daily basis? What reports do I need? What do I use to formulate strategy? Well, it's going to be your account profiles, whether they're electronic or in paper. And we'll talk further about how to develop that. But that needs to be right there where you can grab it on the seat. You shouldn't have to be turning to the back seat to get things, because I can promise you if you do that all day long, you will end up with a sore back or hurt yourself. So put those things that you use on every call right there. And what you'll find is we're big on pre-call planning. So we're going to ask you to refer to that account profile before every call. So that needs to be there. And then what are those other items that you use basically on every single call that you can put on there in an organized fashion and be at the fingertips? The next thing you're going to do is what are those things that I need to have available to me but probably aren't used on every call? Could be some of your reports, it could be any number of things that you may have that you use to support your efforts. Those can go in the back seat and you can put them however they're going to be easily accessible to you. But those things that you find, if you find that you're turning to the back seat too often, then think about adding something to your desk, because it's probably something that is being used on a regular basis. So the other piece that you've got to think about is your trunk. Now your trunk is your filing cabinet and your storage. Don't let your car get out of control. Don't let it become such a mess that you feel really bad about how disorganized you are. And one of the quickest way for that to happen is not to be organized. So in your trunk, you need to have somewhere between 1 and 3 tubs. Okay, tubs are those big plastic things that you can buy at the store. Office supply stores have them. Usually have a plastic top on them that's easy to remove. And you need, if you're going to go the 1 tub route, that one needs to have little rails, so you probably are going to buy that in an office supply store, which will hold hanging folders. And then you're going to set up hanging folders to keep all of the papers, forms, brochures. If you have a lot of different sell sheets or brochures that you use, not that often, you'll be able to keep a supply of them in these file folders that are hanging. We've seen reps that are highly organized that have them color-coded. You can buy them in different colors for different types of things, and then you put the tabs on them that tells you what's in there. Always manage that system such that you have something in place that says this is the last copy or this is the next to the last copy, so that you don't give out your last copy and then forget about it, be somewhere to make a call, and don't have what you need. Okay, so that's very important. The other thing you can do, and if you're using 1 tub, you're going to have to combine this, but we typically, you should have at least 2 tubs. The second tub you're going to use to keep your brochures in. You want to keep them bundled or rubber banded together, and the things that you use in quantity, but you want to keep them in a tub because that will keep them clean. The other thing you'll put in there is any kind of giveaways that you're using frequently. So that tub's going to be your backup supply of brochures and those items that you use continually, and any kind of giveaways if you have giveaways to use. If you have a lot of giveaways, or you have things like brochure stands that are kind of bulky and need to, again, we want to present a very professional image. There's nothing worse than taking someone a dog-eared brochure because it's been running around in your trunk, or a brochure stand that's, well, it's got a few scratches here and there. Okay, we want it to look as good as possible. So if you've got brochure stands or other things like that that take up a lot of room and wouldn't fit in your second tub, that's where you'd get that 3rd tub to keep things like that in. Now clearly you've got to have the room in the trunk of your car to hold 3 tubs, and that's why, depending upon your territory, your car, everything else, you're going to figure out what works best for you. Here's a big benefit to you though. If you have everything in tubs and you use your car for personal use, for me to convert my car from work to personal use only requires me to remove the tubs and set them in the house or set them in the garage. And then if you want to have an extra tub or something, a crate or something, to hold the things that are on the top of your desk and in your backup in the back seat, you can have that car converted within literally 3 or 4 minutes. There's nothing worse than looking at and say, gosh, I got to move all this stuff out, and then it gets piled on the kitchen table or something just so you can use your car to take the kids to the mall. So there's a big benefit in doing this, and the benefits to you are this. If you're organized, you will save time. Your job will be easier, you will be more professional, and at the end of the day, literally, you'll be able to use this in a manner that will make your life so much easier when you convert your office to your fun center with the family. The other thing that's very important that we think about in this mix is your phone. Now you're typically going to have a landline number, some kind of number that goes into the to the hospice program, and a cell number. And then you may have a personal cell number. You need to think through the strategy and make sure that you work with your boss to make sure that you guys come up with a really good strategy of how we're going to use which numbers. We're not big advocates of using personal cell phones for obvious reasons. If you're on vacation and somebody calls because they have a patient that needs hospice and they leave you a voicemail and you're not in a position to answer it, then we've really created a situation that's not going to be in the best interest of our program, our hospice, or our patients. But that, again, is going to be up to you and your boss. Your work cell phone, though, is something that you can hand off to someone if you are on vacation or if you're out ill or whatever happens, or for whatever reason you change territories, leave the organization, that can be handed off and it's not a problem. We do recommend, though, on your business cards to not print your cell number. And here's why. I think if you are going to give somebody a card and you start to hand it to them and then say, oh, you know what, and pull it back and say, let me put my cell number on here for you in case you need to reach me directly. Here's the number on the card that's for your referrals, and call that number. But anytime you need me, here's my cell number. And then that does two things. It reinforces in their mind that we want them to call into our admission center, our referral center, our customer service center, our customer care center, whatever you call it, hopefully not intake. But we want them to call into that number. So you've reinforced that to them, but you've also told them that, hey, here's a personal touch. I'm going to give you, and just you, my cell phone number. Now you may be giving it to everybody, and gosh, in this world everybody's got at least one cell phone, but there's still that piece that says, I'm doing this for you, and I am really giving you, my cell number if you need to reach me immediately. I'm your personal service representative. So it just reinforces what we're going to do and what we're building as far as a relationship, which is that if they need you, they can get you. But if they need to refer a patient, they're going to call the office. And that really works best, and so that's our recommendation on that. The last piece really of getting organized is thinking about how this all fits into your life. What we know about your job is that you could work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and have people to talk to about hospice. But that is not going to happen, and it shouldn't happen. So you need to have a really good idea of what time you're going to spend in your role as a salesperson, in your role as an advocate for hospice, and what amount of time you're going to spend for family, personal, and everything else. And you need to have that delineated and planned out. And again, that's why we want you to be organized and be very good at planning, so that you can be the most effective, execute, and then you're going to be able to enjoy your life. What we find is the #1 cause of burnout for people doing your job is that they work very hard. They're constantly going all over the place, but they don't have a good plan. They haven't established boundaries, so their private life is spilling over into their personal life. They're having, ineffectiveness. Their referrals are either flat or starting to decline, and it's not because they're not working long hours. It's because they haven't organized how they approach it. So be organized, and you will see the benefits professionally, personally, and you will absolutely be one more step closer to being a great professional hospice salesperson.
Now that you have your toolbox for success and have yourself organized, you are on your way to becoming a high-performing hospice sales professional. In our next section, we'll discuss the #1 most effective tool to add to your toolbox, differentiation. If you can pinpoint what makes working with you different than working with the hospice agencies in your territory, then you will be well on your way to building a solid foundation to build the rest of your sales skills on. With this foundation, you will build an unbreakable relationship with your referral sources and your customers, and with your community. Ready to tackle the next section? The second module, differentiation. Lesson 1, differentiating myself and my agency.
Let's talk a little bit about differentiating yourself, setting yourself apart, having people know that there's a difference of working with you. Because at the end of the day, that's what we've got to establish in their minds. And there's 3 basic ways to differentiate yourself. The first one is differentiating your hospice program. So how am I going to differentiate what we do, how we do it, and why we would be that logical solution for the referral part? So the first way is finding ways to differentiate my hospice. Now, a lot of times, we get stuck there. But the second way of doing it is, what are the services or solutions that your hospice program provide, and differentiating those to the community. And I think that's where you're going to get great power and lots of leverage. The third one, though, is differentiating you. You cannot forget ever at any point, it's so important that you create a personal brand, that you build a personal relationship. Now, it's a fine line, because if you focus only on building that friendly piece, or you're all happy talk and whatnot, and trying to make friends first, then you're going to have difficulty converting that to a professional relationship. So you want to have that balance in there. There's some people that you will become friends with. One of the great things about your job is you'll you'll have people you work with that you work with for years and years, and you guys really become very good friends in the process. You don't have to be friends to differentiate your hospice program and work with them to meet the needs of their patients for whom hospice would be appropriate. So build your brand, and in their mind, when they see you coming through the door, they know who you are, they know the company you represent, and they know the company and you make a difference in their life. Let's start with really and truly differentiating yourself. It starts with being really good at introducing yourself, and again, that's one of the tools that we're gonna set you up with. But again, don't pay short shrift to that. Make sure that you focus on that, because we're making that first impression, and you never know when they're going to form that first impression, but first impressions are very powerful. So how do we form a really good first impression and differentiate ourselves? Well, first off, I would be positive. My attitude should be positive, and I should let my passion for what I do come through. Okay? If you're not passionate about hospice and the difference it makes in people's lives, you're not going to be as effective. So you've got to focus in on how do you let that passion come through. Okay, so it's a positive attitude. It's exuding your passion for what you do, why you love your job. I mean, I wouldn't hesitate at various times in conversation say, you know, that's why I love what I do, because I have the opportunity to make a difference in your patients' lives. Okay, so have that passion come through. You've got to be consistent. Okay, if you can develop a consistency so that people keep building their impression call after call after call. And what you'll hear us say more than once is that it's not individual sales calls you're doing, but it's a long sales call that just has different pieces that you do at a time. Okay, so you've got to be consistent. You can't be happy-go-lucky one day and a bad attitude the next day. You can't be passionate one day but really rush the next day. You can't dress professionally one day and the next day show up like you're going to the beach. Okay, so you've got to be consistent in how you act and how you show up and how you look and how you present yourself. So what's the best way to do that? Be yourself. If you can be yourself, you don't have to worry about what is it that I'm supposed to do or what's my persona for this account. So we've found that the number one thing that we're going to train you, and you'll find throughout all of this toolbox and throughout all of our training programs, is that we're going to help you be good at each of these tools, but doing it in your own way so that it's consistent with who you are, how you are, because that's what's going to really deliver the results. Another thing that's really got to be thought about as far as consistency and differentiating yourself is how often you make contact with your accounts. And we'll talk about how important it is to have that planned out. But what I'm going to tell you is that if you're trying to form an impression, if you're trying to differentiate your agency and yourself in the eyes of that potential referral partner or existing referral partner, I've got to be consistent, because the only thing that we know that will shorten the sales cycle is the number of times you get face-to-face with them. So be consistent and be regular, and make sure that your plan is going to support that. I've got to be a really good active listener. I've got to have the person I'm talking to get that I care about what they're saying and that I'm listening to it. One of the things we've found is if you take a notepad or something in to take notes with, if you're taking notes while someone is talking to you, that says, I think what you said was important enough to write it down. It also helps to remember things later if you have any difficulty remembering details. But you've got to make sure that you're doing that and you're really a very good active listener. And you'll hear us say multiple times, it's not about you talking, it's about them talking and you listening and helping them to tell you what you need to know. And that comes from probing for needs, using those good probing questions, being prepared when you go in there. That will set you apart as a professional more than anything. Something along those lines to keep in mind, especially if you're new, is use being new as a tool that's going to give you power. You really have a gift in being new. So don't run around trying to have people think, ooh, she's not new, or I don't want them to understand that I'm a brand new sales rep. Use that to your advantage. Put your cards on the table, be honest about it, but use that and say, you know, what I know is to really serve your account and be truly your personal service representative, I need to know what's important to you. So let's talk about that. What's most important about hospice? And you can have your checklist there. I've seen reps, brand new reps that are a little bit concerned about remembering everything. So just make up a little form. Okay, you're essentially filling out your account profile form in front of them. If you've taken over the account or the territory from someone else, do not assume that what they logged in their account profile is accurate. And again, it helps if you let them know that you're here to bring hospice services to them by knowing what's important to them. So you'll set yourself apart, you'll differentiate yourself as a professional. When we're presenting the solutions, again, we've got to be good at uncovering needs and then presenting it in a manner that reinforces the fact that they'd really be smart for working with us, and we're going to make it their idea. Because what we're trying to avoid is the perception that we're there to just sell them something, okay? If you are projectile selling, you are throwing stuff at them and trying to tell them everything you can about your hospice, features, as fast as you can. I've only got 3 minutes, so I'm going to tell them everything I can. I'm going to give them an overview of services, let them know how great we are, how many years we've been here, all of those kind of things. You're not setting yourself apart. You're painting the picture in their mind that says, oh, well, it's just another obnoxious hospice salesperson. So let's let your competition do that. You're going to set yourself apart by being a professional. If you use your toolbox and all of the sales skills we're going to help you put in that toolbox, you will find that you will set yourself apart as the true hospice sales professional, and that may, at the end of the day, be one of your most important differentiators. The other thing you can do that's extremely important is how you follow up. Once you have had a conversation, what am I going to do to follow up? Are you going to send them a thank you note? Did I promise to find something out for them? Did I establish with them, gain a commitment that the next time I come by here, we're going to talk about that? Or I'll follow up and find out some information for you and get back to you. We've got to be really, really good at follow-up. And that, too, will set yourself apart from your competition because, I hate to say this, but the hospice industry is not good at follow-up. Okay? We do a great job, and we don't let things slide, but we're not the best at following up. So you need to lead the way and be an example for your organization and really be good at that following up. Some of the things, too, that you can look at is getting involved in the community, getting involved with certain associations. It may be the Heart Association, it may be kidney, cancer, whatever it is that's really important to you. Could be an elder care networking group. It could be any type of group or organization where you can network. That's another way to set yourself apart because those are typically gatherings of professional people with a common interest of some sort. And so participate in there. But here's the key to being successful with networking. Pick those causes that are important to you. Pick those causes that you're passionate about, that you want to be involved with, because then the networking and the relationships you build will be based on doing the right things for the right reasons, not for being there trying to figure out how you can get something out of it. So if you go to a networking group and all your strategy is how am I going to get something out of this for me, and not what can I add to this group, you're wasting your time. And it's got to be, your time is your most precious resource. So you cannot afford to spend a lot of time in all these, group meetings. You could spend a lot of time trying to go to every different group or community group and whatnot, association or otherwise, and you just don't have that much time. So pick carefully something you're passionate about and you want to participate in and is consistent with what your hospice is doing, and then get involved. And get involved in a way that says, I'm here because I care. And that, again, will set yourself apart from the person who comes just looking for what's in it for me. The last thing that you want to think about when you're talking about how you can set yourself apart is looking for maybe those little special or personal touches. Now, I'm not big on frou-frou or bows and things like that, and I'm not really an advocate of giving away a lot of goodies or baked goods or things like that. So we're really not talking about that. We're just talking about what are some little things that you can do to be memorable. And one of them is thank you notes. In today's world, a handwritten thank you note that says, thanks so much for meeting with me the other day. I look forward to working with you to meet the needs of your hospice patients, or whatever you may want to put in there that ties back to what you talked about. If you're going to do that, do it in the car after you've had the meeting and drop it in the nearest post box. Okay? Mail it immediately. So have stamps, have thank you cards at disposal. If you wait a week, there's not the same impact. So if you're going to do something, do it right. But find little things you can do to set yourself apart that people will remember and think of you and say, you know what, they really go the full distance and they really care and they really take those extra little things which are important to us.
Lesson 2, competition.
Let's talk a little bit about competition. You know, everybody's, we talk to, Ted keeps telling us, oh, we've got more competition. And what we know is that that's true. There are more competitors in the marketplace. Now, some markets, it's a ridiculous number. Other markets, there's a limited number of competitors. But I'm going to tell you, no matter how many competitors you have, it's very competitive to get those referrals. You know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But what I'm going to tell you is never, ever have as your excuse for why I'm not getting business, oh, well, we've got too many competitors. Okay? That's not going to be acceptable. So what do I need to know about those competitors so I can really be a good competitor myself? How can I compete and win? Remember we said that that was your first set of strategies so that you could develop more referrals and grow your business, was compete and win. Okay? What do I need to know if I'm trying to differentiate myself in the mind of the discharge planner, for example, in a hospital? What do I need to know about those competitors so that I make sure that my differentiation is targeted to something that they don't do well or don't do at all? Great example would be service area. Let's say that your hospice serves a very large area, maybe 5 or 6 county area, and the hospital hospice serves just 1 county. Then if I know that, then I immediately have a way to work with them and differentiate ourselves because we serve them. We can help them with those patients that are going home to Montgomery County or Orange County or whatever it might be. Okay, so the first thing you've got to know is what area do they serve? Okay, what do they do? What kind of services do they provide? Are they really good at certain things? Do they have a lot of alternative therapies? Do they have music therapy or go down the list of possible things they could have, aroma, massage, clown therapy, whatever it might be. What do they do? And here's something I want you to keep in mind when you're doing your homework, is this. It's not important what you think. It's not important what others in your organization think, because you can always find that nurse in the organization that used to work for the competitor and can tell you all the dirt, right? You want to know what the referral partners think of them and what they're saying about themselves. How are they perceived in the community? Because that's what's important. If they don't do a good job of promoting an aspect of what they do, then don't bring it up. Don't do their job for them. You don't have to set yourself apart against that differentiator because they're not doing a good job themselves. So know what they do, where they serve, what kind of additional therapies or other things they do, bereavement programs. Go down the list of all the things that you do as a hospice program, all of those things that are really important about your program, and find out about them. Now, you may say, well, Mike, I've got 50 competitors. How am I ever going to do all of that? Well, it's easy. You start with the competitor who is competing with you for business in your most important accounts. Okay? So start with 1, 2, or 3 competitors. What are the ones that cause you the most problems? Which are the ones that you come up against? That doesn't mean the biggest ones or the national players or the hospital-based. In your territory, with your accounts, which competitor causes you the most problems? And that's where you start, and find out and do your homework and focus in and get a lot of information, because with that information we can craft a sales strategy that's going to allow us to compete and win those business and those referrals. When we're talking about our competitors, some things that we want to do and other things that we just don't want to do. Number 1 on that list, absolutely positively never trash a competitor. Okay? Even if they're out there slinging mud, you will never gain any ground or gain any business by trashing a competitor. And be careful, because sometimes some of your referral partners will try and suck you into it. You know, they'll say things like, oh, did you hear what happened over at XYZ Hospice? Don't go there, okay? Do not get in the mud. Once you're in the mud, you've established yourself as being a mudslinger and someone that doesn't have that idea that we're always going to take the high ground. So always take the high road and never, ever, ever, ever trash your competitor. The other thing that we believe is, and we've found in our research, is it's more effective if you do not mention the competitor by name. So only talk to the name of the competitor if the client, if the referral partner brings it up. If they ask you specifically about a specific program, yeah, that's fine, you can talk about it. But otherwise, talk to those issues, but don't identify them by name. Okay, there's no reason to help them with their branding campaign in your best accounts. Also, when we're looking at competing and talking about our competitors or talking about the things that we're going to do that are going to enable us to compete, make no assumptions. Okay, don't assume because you go into a physician practice, for example, and there's a brochure holder in the front full of one of your competitors' brochures. Don't assume that they're using them. Okay, it's just the fact that all we know for sure is someone dropped off a brochure holder full of brochures and put it in their waiting room. So don't make assumptions. Because somebody mentioned them or somebody said, hey, I saw an XYZ hospice car in front of one of our ex-patients' houses or whatever you may hear, do your homework. Make no assumptions, okay? And don't assume that your best referral partners or your referral partners are using a competitor for a certain reason unless you know for sure. So like a lot of things in life, we just can't afford to make any assumptions whatsoever. Now the information that we collect, the data that we have, and we're looking at probably market share data. How much of a market share do they have? How much market share do you have? If you're the big dog in town, if you're the biggest program in town, then know that pretty much every one of those competitors is shooting at you. If you're the smaller player, then you have an opportunity, because you don't have a lot of people shooting at you, you have the opportunity to figure out where your niche is and where you're going to fit into that market. If you are the big dog, though, you better know your competitors and know what they're saying about themselves and about you. We're not going to sling any mud, but it's important to know. And again, don't take anything personally, and make sure that whatever data you've got, you keep it current and you know what's going on and you know what is out there. One of the things that we tend to do is create competition in our own mind that really doesn't exist. So don't, again, make assumptions. Don't let your mind go off on this long tangent and one thing leads to another and all of a sudden you've got it all figured out and you've got the whole competitive scenario worked out, only to find out that there really wasn't a competitor there. Just because a referral partner has slowed down on their referrals doesn't necessarily mean they're sending them somewhere else. It may just be that we haven't done our job and helped them to identify the patients that are going to be appropriate for hospice. Or it could be in a skilled facility where they've had a change in their philosophy regarding hospice patients in the unit, and that's why we're not getting the business. So don't let your mind run to create competition, certainly where it doesn't exist. The other thing you want to think about is taking your time, okay? Take the time to really figure that competition out. If they're not a significant competitor, if you're not going up against them and they're not costing you business in your accounts, then don't waste your time. But what we said was identify the top 1, 2, or maybe 3, rarely is it going to be more than 3, competitors in your market that are costing you business. And then take your time to really analyze them, figure out their position in the marketplace, figure out why it is, what the perception is and why your referral partner is using them or considering using them, and then plot your strategy to combat that. So pick your targets and then do your homework and take the time to really do it right. Don't ever stop collecting competitive intelligence information. You are always have your antenna up or whatever it is so that you've got your ear to the ground and you know what's going on. And there may be some elements in the whole competitive arena that come into play. There's a particular director of nursing at a skilled facility who has a relationship with one of your competitors. Well, I want to make sure that I know what's going on over there, because what do we know about DONs and social workers and discharge planners? They move around a lot. I want to know when they move, because that's an opening for me. If my competitive issue was a personal relationship with someone else, I need to know when that's no longer going to be important to them. I also can't assume that just because they do have that relationship, that that's going to carry the day. So make sure you know what's going on and you continually do your homework. You should be looking at the newspapers, certainly watching the obits and looking at the obituaries to see, who's getting donations, who's getting mentioned in people's obituaries. That's important to know. Know what brochures are out there, just really constantly be doing your investigative work to know what your competition's up to and how we're going to use that to our best advantage. So keep your antennas up, keep your ears to the ground, and make sure that you know what's going on with your competition. But at the end of the day, it's not going to make a huge difference, because what's going to carry the day is that you make the impression and you present a solution that you offer as a logical solution to the need of one of your referral partners or potential referral partners. And what you'll find is many times that will transcend whatever competitive elements were out there.
Lesson 3, what do I sell?
As I'm figuring out what it is that I sell, which is very important if you think about it, and sometimes I believe that we in the hospice sales profession don't give enough time to really think about what is it I'm selling. We're not just selling hospice. If you're out there on a daily basis talking about hospice, okay, and just selling hospice, then you're not branding anything. You're certainly not branding your own hospice agency. And for years, we've done a great job of talking about hospice. We've talked about home care. We've built the brand of the word hospice, but it's important that you're constantly looking at, what do I sell? How do I sell it? And what's going to make the difference so that people are able to immediately identify our hospice as their preferred choice, as their solution to their needs. So the first thing you want to do is really get good at defining your services. If you're brand new, make sure that this is a big part of your orientation. Find out everything you do. We're big believers in going out in the field and riding with some of the care staff and actually experiencing the difference that hospice makes and really seeing it firsthand. Now that's really going to be up to your boss and your company and their philosophies, but we think it makes sense. So if it's not part of your orientation, you might ask if you can do it. But know the organization and find out all of the services we provide. What are all the little things we do? What are those alternative therapies? What are the things that make us different? Where do we go territorially? What kind of certification do our nurses have? What are all those things that we said we were going to use in differentiating ourselves that are there, and really make sure that we're listing them out so that you know exactly what it is you're selling in the community at all times. Again, if we're just selling hospice, we're not doing our job, because there's a lot of hospices out there. So we've got to know exactly what our services are and what is the solution that we represent for that referral partner. How are we setting ourselves apart? And all of those things should tie back to the benefits of each of those items to the person that I'm talking to. So look at that and really define what it is we're selling by looking first at your services. Look at what makes your agency different. We said that there were 2 ways to differentiate yourself, and the second was the services. The first is the agency itself. Okay, what sets it apart, and how does that tie back to what I'm selling? What we're doing now is we're taking the work you did to figure out how you're different and how you're differentiating yourself, and we're putting that into now a sales strategy. What is it that I'm selling? Get very clear on exactly what you're selling, what the benefits are to the community, and that way you'll be good at crafting each of the pieces in your toolbox that'll come after this. As you're doing that, be thinking about who's going to have an interest in these services. What we know is that a lot of the things that we do are really geared towards different venues, different types of professions, different types of specialists. So what we may do for an oncologist may not be the same thing we do for a pulmonologist. So you need to, as you're breaking it out, think about not only what am I selling, but then when I think about who am I selling to, then think about what is it I'm selling to them. And that'll help you really fill out that list and get a really long list of things that are what you, at the end of the day, are out there selling. Again, we're out there advocating for hospice. We're helping the community, the patients and their families understand how hospice works, understand truly what a gift hospice is. But you, as the hospice sales professional, have the burden to be able to clearly define what it means to anybody you may be talking to. So when we're talking about knowing what you sell, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about being very clear on specifics of what you sell and not just be out there in the community selling hospice.
Let's talk about what you've just learned. There are 3 ways to differentiate yourself from your competition. The first is your agency, the second is your services, and the third is you. Don't forget to develop a personal brand. When thinking about what differentiates you from the competition, consider any specialty programs you have or unique services you may offer. Avoid things like we provide quality care or we have a really great staff. Focus on features that are measurable and truly unique as opposed to the stuff that everybody else is using. Now that you've learned about differentiation, you understand how this concept is the most important tool in a hospice salesperson's toolbox and how it is the foundation for everything else you will learn. The next tool we will discuss is a concept so simple that most salespeople dismiss it as unimportant. Well, not only is it important, but it's the key that opens the door to the rest of the call. If you don't have a key, the door might remain closed forever. This is where sales reps that feel like they go on great calls but never get a referral get tripped up. They disregard one of the most basic tenets of a good sales call, introductions. Ready to get your first advantage over those other sales reps? Let's pop in the next CD.